There we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Welsh Rugby Roundup Show. But it's not just going to be about Welsh Rugby this week. We have a brand new season of Pro 14 Rugby. We've had the first weekend, which we will delve into just in a second. But as you can see, live on the screen right now, we have 4 fantastic guests joining us. And we've got someone to cover each nation, which is fantastic to see. And I'm just going to introduce them now quickly. First of all, we've got Rhian once again back. She is the co-host of the show, was on the last show with us. She is the co-founder of Rugby Chat and Banter, and arguably is one of the biggest Welsh rugby fans out there, apart from myself, I'd like to think. But Rhian, welcome once again. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. It's been a long old time since the last show, our first show. Things have got in the way. At least it's rugby now, isn't it? You know, it's been a hard old slog since March and lockdown, and but at least although I'm in lockdown down here at the moment, in Caerphilly area, at least there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel now, and we've got games to watch.
Exactly, and we will get into those games, but it's so good to have rugby back. Our next guest is Stephen Murphy. Stephen runs a sport podcast out of Galway called the Master of None podcast. The podcast covers rugby, basketball, and American football, but all kinds of sport as well. The podcast focuses on having a bit of crack. I think I said that right.
Correct, yeah.
About the sports you love, and also ranting about Irish rugby. And of course, when they'll fall out of the World Cup in the quarter-final stage, sometimes against Wales. Stephen, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, I'm very good. Thank you for thanks for having me. Just want to clarify, the crack I'm talking about is the legal kind, not the stuff that the guards, the cops, whatever you want to call them, will be on to you. So, no, thanks for having me as always. Love chatting a bit of rugby, so should be a bit of fun.
I'm definitely thinking of the legal stuff. Definitely, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Our next guest then is all the way from the mighty Scotland. John Anderson joins us. He is one of the talking heads from the Scottish Rugby Blog podcast, regularly popping up on screens and audio to offer his light-hearted and accessible views on the game. John, welcome. Fantastic to have you on. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, it's good to be on. Looking forward to this. A wee review of the games this weekend. It's good to have rugby back.
Absolutely. It's fantastic to have it back. It feels like it's been a while, but we have rugby back. And finally, and certainly not least, we have a very special guest on. Well, they're all special guests, of course, but Andrea is on from Italy. He's an active rugby amateur player. He's well known in the local area of Treviso, and he is very proactive in rugby in that area. He's also engaged in Rugby United since late 2014, managing 3 accounts over the socials: Rugby Italy, Rugby Treviso, and Zebra. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure, and so thanks to having me. Absolute pleasure here, and this evening I am very curious to share with you what's happening around rugby in Europe, and is a brand new news today that we start from this evening to watch live rugby. Okay, due to the COVID restrictions, just 1,000 people are able to go to the stadium, but it's just a beginning. It's a good beginning, and I want to share these positive things with you today.
It certainly is a positive, and that's what we want to see here in the UK as well, is to see rugby coming back again, and in Ireland as well. Before we get any further, make sure that you have liked the page and that you get your thoughts in the comments as we go through the show. But there is something I want to bring to everyone's attention. It's about a guy called Matt Ratana, who was a police officer, who's a head coach at East Grinstead, and unfortunately he passed away recently. And there's a fantastic award, BBC Unsung Hero, and I'd encourage anyone who loves rugby and loves the game and understands the importance of volunteers in rugby would head over to the link in the chat. I believe Joe has put it up in there, and vote, so we can try and put a memory in place and a tribute to him, that in rugby we're fantastic at doing. We support each other in rugby. That's the beauty of rugby. It brings people together, and this is something that we certainly want to do. So it'll be linked in the chat. For anyone who's watching, please do go ahead, follow that link, read a little bit more about the story, and vote for him on BBC Unsung Hero. We're first of all going to talk about the competition format. The format, of course, has been up in the air over the past few weeks, with a few South African teams being mentioned about coming in and coming out. And I was just interested to get everyone's thoughts on this one. I'll give my thoughts first, and then people can disagree with me, because, you know, that's the beauty of rugby. We all have opinions and we're always right. So that's the beauty of rugby. And I don't know what I feel about these South African teams. Of course, the Southern Kings are no more. They are not going to be in the Pro 14. And we have the Cheetahs, and potentially there were talks of 4 of the South African teams being added into it. But of course, COVID restrictions, traveling restrictions is something that we're very aware of. We're aware of the issues that we face with that kind of thing. But I'm going to come first of all to John. I want to get your thoughts on the proposed idea of another South African team joining the league. Or would you be interested in seeing a team maybe somewhere from like Georgia coming in? Is that something we could look at? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think we have to be very pragmatic, particularly in current times. There's a lot of money comes in with the South African franchises, particularly if they are able to retain some of the World Cup winning talent that they currently have in their ranks, the 4 Super Rugby teams that are proposed to be coming over to join us. And I think for the Pro, well, whatever number it is now, it can only be beneficial. The more teams that come over, the more challenging games that clubs have. You know, teams just now, there can be quite a spread, particularly when the Southern Kings were in the league. There was quite a spread of, you know, you could maybe put out a second, third, sometimes in Leinster's case, a 4th team for that game. Whereas, you know, obviously you're playing Leinster as close to international rugby as you'll get, really. So having these South African teams is only going to raise the profile of the league. It's only going to raise the quality that all the players are facing. And from a Scots perspective, that's brilliant for our 2 clubs, giving guys more exposure to what is probably closer to international rugby. So money and talent speaks to me. It's a shame for places like Georgia. Obviously, there is money in Georgian rugby, but you know, it's too big a risk in this current climate, and I don't think CVC would go for it.
Yeah, and I think what you say, money is going to be a massive issue in whatever happens here. And I actually think the Cheetahs have done okay on the whole. Yeah. The Southern Kings, being honest, were pretty poor. And as you said, you know, obviously Leinster, we'll get to them later when we speak to Stephen more about them, but they were up here. They are miles apart. No losses last season, incredible season. And you know, we'll get into our predictions later, but we could see something quite similar. And Rian, what do you think about this from a Welsh perspective? Do you welcome the idea of more South African teams?
Well, I know you've got your Dragons shirt on today, but it was the Southern Kings who kept Ospreys off the bottom of the conference last year. So you know, swings and roundabouts. Again, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's it depends. You know, we know because of lockdown that any South African teams are not likely to come in until probably after Christmas now. And then, but will they be part of the league? Because will there be time for everyone to play more than one? You know, each one more than once. I'm not really sure. In terms of the principle of extending the competition, I'm quite happy because I totally agree with John. You know, it's sort of it can actually up a game, and it brings it can do the if the standard is high, it can stretch our regional teams in Wales, and I think that's what they need, is some really good high class competition. You know, just looking from outside the Pro 14, watching Leinster Saracens, that was a game and a half, wasn't it? You know, and I think that's what the Welsh regions certainly need, is being pushed and stretched.
Absolutely. And of course, there has been talk. I saw the Dragons chairman, I believe, come out a few weeks ago and talk about the idea of a British and Irish league, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get into
the Welsh have been shouting for that for so many years now. It's not going to happen, eh?
It always stumbles at the money, doesn't it? Because you can't expect everyone to be getting the same sort of revenues, and the English are always going to be in the driving seat on that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not to say that we shouldn't be playing the English teams, because the Premiership teams, again, that's what our guys need week in, week out. It's that sort of level of rugby, and I think it'd be great, but I totally agree with you. The rest of you guys, it's just a long way away.
Exactly. Andrea, do you fancy a few more trips to South Africa? Do you fancy jumping on a plane to a few nice places in South Africa next season? Oh, Andrea is muted.
That's how much he fancies a trip to South Africa.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry, Andrea.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. I just want to tell you that I wish to go to South Africa because a part of my family is there. My relatives lives there, and we just have to look at the other side of the story, because actually the Pro 14 is boosting a lot of young generation to get in rugby, and I hope that everybody knows well what is rugby, what are the values, and in that part of the Africa, they feel very positive if the play continues to be there. Actually, okay, the COVID just cancelled. Also, I can't have some South African relatives next Christmas because there's for sure no fly for and to back there. But the next season could be very, very interesting, because I heard that maybe 2 more South African teams get in the Pro 14. I hope so.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. The 4 teams that have been mentioned are the Bulls, the Sharks, the Stormers, and the Lions. Those are the 4 teams that have been proposed. Stephen, from an Irish perspective, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with John. A lot of things he said there. I think a lot of it is money based. Unfortunately, with I don't want to say the C word, the COVID, but the pandemic that we've had this year, cash is tight for everybody. So it's a case of, we all feel bad for the Cheetahs and the Southern Kings. Obviously, in a perfect world, this wouldn't be happening. But the way clubs are at the moment, they need cash, and I think Leinster would have benefited this year before that Saracens game, playing a few more tougher games than they did. They never got out of third gear in Pro 14, and unfortunately, that's not a switch you can just flick on and off. You need to build up to that sort of a game. So it's the same with Ulster. Ulster came up against a buzzsaw of Toulouse, and it's because they just weren't used to playing that kind of caliber of team, and it's unfortunate in that sense. So I think, people say it's not good for some teams to get in bet, week in, week out, but it's one way of getting better is to play against these top teams and getting to that level. And we saw how good Super Rugby caliber teams were in the Aotearoa this year. And even Super Rugby AU for a while. So I think it's positive in the sense of how competitive it will be, but obviously it's disappointing for the Southern Kings and the Cheetahs.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think, as we've all alluded, it is money. That's the big driving force here, unfortunately. But the season has started. We've had a few games. We're going to quickly whiz through them all now, because I really want to focus on each individual team, give a bit of time to each team, because there are fans of so many different teams going to be watching, want to hear about their side, get our predictions for their team. And people watching, get your comments in. What are your predictions for your team? Let's start with the Friday night game. Quite a classic in Italy. Zebra 6, Cardiff Blues 16. We'll go to Andrea first. From an Italian perspective, how did you view this game? 1,000 fans allowed back in the stadium, which is something we're very jealous of here in the UK. What did you think of this game?
So, Brendan, I just want to tell that particular match was most important for the entire sport field, not only for the rugby, also for soccer, because actually we are trying to base the rules of sports and COVID, like you know better than me. And that one was the first match. And about the Zebra against Cardiff, it was very important because not only was the first match for the entire tournament in Pro 14, also in Italy the attention was very high for the COVID restriction, and at the end the team was playing not such well, but the supporters has received a very good behavior for the new kind of rules to follow. And a lot of people was very curious about it. The match was immediately corrupted by a yellow card caused by Mori. Mori is a pretty young player, but that yellow that gives you back immediately the high level of stress, because that mistake was not so bad, but was very, very like a young player. But Mori, who tried to reach Morgan, and he hit it during this jump. At the second half, the match wasn't so bad, but became the first red card of the tournament. And another sign to give you back how was the stress there. Was for the Welsh in the number 8, but Zebre wasn't able to earn this advantage, showing a match dedicated to defense, ending 6-16 for Cardiff Blues. At the end, wasn't not such a good match for Zebre, but if you add that match to the last one against Benetton, showing a Zebre team that is growing, thanks obviously for the coach that is an English coach, and also the team now is growing. I'm very curious about the next match for Zebre.
Yeah, I watched a bit of the game. I didn't think it was quite a classic, really, but the red card, we saw a lot of cards this weekend. Certainly a red card, in my opinion, leading with the shoulder. Okay, the plate is going down a little bit, but again, they've got to make an effort to tackle much lower than that. Rhian, from a Welsh point of view, good result for Cardiff Blues' first game away.
Yeah, and fair play. It was a game of Josh's, wasn't it? Josh Adams with his try, and Josh Turnbull coming off. I think the wind was affecting the kicking game. But I'd have thought that Cardiff couldn't be happier to win an away game, first game. After last season, they needed to start well, and I think they'll be pleased with that.
Absolutely. Let's rush on to the next one then. Leinster against Dragons. Yeah, this was an interesting one, wasn't it? From a Dragons point of view, from a Wales point of view, I thought Dragons in the first half just looked lackluster. Yes, Leinster were brilliant. They were very good. But it didn't seem like there was that much effort. They weren't getting up to the game. They weren't getting over the game line. The line speed was shocking, in my opinion. It just felt like, not that they'd given up before kickoff, but there wasn't that desire to get forward. Stephen, is this just something we expect from Leinster, that they're going to win every single game this season? Poor old Dragons having to face them away first game of the season. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, look, Leinster are a well-oiled machine at this stage, but I think you're right. I think half the teams that go out to play Leinster are already beaten before they even step on the pitch, and I'm including some of the provinces in that, especially the last few games against Munster. But look, Leinster are relentless. There's no let up. You are constantly working as soon as you come on the pitch. Like the third try went in the 20-something minutes, and Dragons players looked exhausted. I don't even know if it was effort. I think they just couldn't keep up with the ridiculous pace. The ball's being recycled so quickly by Gibbs and Park. You've got runners coming onto the ball like Rhys Ruddock, who is a monster of a man. It's great to see him back from an Irish perspective. But even Jack, your Jack Conan 8, your Rhys Ruddock's at 6. I don't want to be running into them boys constantly for 80 minutes. And it's just tough. They as I said before, they're relentless. They just don't give up. Even there was 10 minutes to go, the game was out of sight. Dragons were camped on their line for a good 7 or 8 minutes of that, and they just refused to concede. It's a pure thing at the moment. And as I said before, I think a lot of teams are beaten, which is ironic because I think they have a mental block when it comes to Saracens. Leinster is like the one team that they have, but when it comes to the Pro 14, yeah, I don't see who can actually really put it up to them at this moment in time. But I hope I'm wrong, because I don't like seeing any team going unbeaten, even if it is an Irish province.
And Leinster just are that strong. And, you know, as John alluded to earlier on, they could put probably their fourth team out and beat Southern Kings. And realistically, they could put their second or third team out against the Dragons. But by the end of the game, I'm sure Rian will agree with me and will add on to this. I was genuinely impressed by the Dragons' mentality, as Stephen just alluded to. And the Ashton Hewitt try at the end, the finish, really, really good. You know, he's been rumoured to be named in the Wales squad, which will be named tomorrow. That's been heavily rumoured. Some positive signs, Rian?
Yeah, there was a lot of creaking scrums, and you know, a lot of the set pieces didn't go their way, and I think there's been, you know, there's some really good players being signed to the Dragons, but they're not yet playing as a team. But what I will agree with you, there is towards the end of the game we started seeing perhaps a bit of meshing, and hopefully, you know, it's a case of onward and upward, because to be honest, they've had the worst first, and I think we'll probably, you know, the next time out, they're not going to have that Leinster stronghold. You know, it's a bit of a fortress anyway, and I totally agree with Stephen. You're almost lost before you go, unless you can really change that mentality. It's a bit like Wales playing in the Principality Stadium, isn't it? You know, that's their fortress. They need to learn to play outside the Principality, and I think they need to play. The Dragons need to be able to play outside Rodney Parade.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake puts a really interesting comment up here. Dragons have one of the weakest front five out of the four regions. I think they need a very powerful. I think, yeah, I agree. But I think the back line is looking very exciting in Tompkins. You got Jamie Roberts, who, although he's a little bit older, can still do a job, in my opinion. Sam Davis left the Ospreys, went to the Dragons, and has done fairly well. Jonah Holmes. There's some decent players coming through there. Let's quickly move on to, in my opinion, one of the games of the weekend, Ulster against Benetton. What a game this was. Andrea sent me the highlights, and I hadn't called this game work, and what a game this was. Andrea, back and forth all game, really. Benetton, from their point of view, encouraging that they challenged last year's runners-up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brandon. Let me tell you that the match of the last weekend was great, absolutely, and remind me immediately another historical match, because if we cancel probably the last season, the 1920, caused by COVID, but we remind about 18 and 19 season, Benetton reached the highest point in his career, weren't able to get the semi-final against Munster, and was one of the best moments. But jump to the latest match, Ulster versus Benetton. It was a great match, like confirmed, not only because obviously I'm a side of, but tweeting live, a lot of reporters and a lot of supporters telling me that was a brilliant match. And thanks to the Rugby Treviso Twitter account, I get immediately the connection with the real excitement, and was very high. But not only from the Bennett side, also from the Ulster supporter side. When Riccioni, the prop, is a very young prop, 23 years old, 186 centimeters, and around 120 kilos, had a badly injured, was a shock not only for the Italian supporter, but also for the Ulster, that immediately they tweeted me, and they were worried, they were sorry about him. So a markable moment was before the end of the first half, when Shockdale made a high tackle to Duvenage. Duvenage is not so a huge guy, but the tackle was bad, giving a yellow card immediately for the Lions. Yes, we named it the Lions because the lion is the ancient symbol of the Venice Shire, and now is also the Benetton rugby logo. So in one made less, one made more, the Lions reached 21-21 at the end of the first half. It was a very high level for the match. Then there were a lot of tries from both sides, confirming the higher level of fitness also from the teammates. A good defense and a very confident moment of attacks served with a fluid speed declared that the last Ulster versus Benetton was one of the most exciting match of the Pro 14 history. This is the latest news that Riccioni, the prop that I mentioned before, is not badly injured, but for sure has to recover for a long time. And I just think at the end of this month, on the 30th of October, there's Italy against England in Rome.
Yeah, and that'll be very interesting to see. But I was very encouraged by Benetton's performance. And Benetton they've nearly been there, haven't they? They've always nearly been there. And it's going to be interesting to see how they can go this season. Stephen, just a quick word on Ulster. Good start with a win.
Yeah, look, if this game wasn't in Ulster would have lost this game. I'm convinced of it. But Ulster now have gone 22 games unbeaten in Belfast, so they've made it a fortress, and that's what they wanted to do, and that's what they've done. So, no, look, Ulster are happy to get this game underway. Two pretty bad performances when it comes to Pro 14 final, and then against Toulouse, they never kind of got up to speed, or I think just come up against teams that were just a class above. But Ulster had a good young team out, so I think they'll take a lot of positives from this. You've got Hume, Stuart Moore scored a lovely try. So even it's Mike Lowry, you had John Cooney, who looked a bit more back to his best. You had no Billy Burns either. So a lot of positives to take from Ulster. They wanted to get the season started pretty quickly, I'd imagine, and they have done in the right kind of way. So I only upwards and onwards for Ulster, I think.
Absolutely. Now we're going to move on to my team, the Ospreys, and you're probably wondering why I'm wearing a Dragons shirt. Please don't kill me. I swear I'm an Ospreys fan. I just simply couldn't find my Ospreys shirt. I am an Ospreys fan. And we got a win. And we haven't had many of them in the last 18 months. We've only won 2 out of 20 games in the last 18 months. So we got a win, which is quite impressive, against Edinburgh. John, you've been sitting very quietly, but your thoughts on this one? Edinburgh just weren't at the races, were they?
No, I think someone must have told Richard Cockrow and his boys that the off season was a week longer than it actually was. Edinburgh, they had a couple of their sort of big names were out injured. Missing Bill Mata, Duhan van der Merwe. Jamie Ritchie had been stood down for COVID protocol as well, but there's no excuse. The performance Edinburgh put out was reminiscent of the dark old days before the South African teams came in, when Edinburgh were fighting with the Italian guys for they were lucky to finish sixth in their or finish in the bottom two. It was so bad from Edinburgh. I think the Ospreys done a professional performance. Obviously you had a couple of the big names out for the Ospreys as well. Alan Jones making the lesser spotted AWJ making an appearance for the Ospreys. It's like hen's teeth. So, but it was good. It was good to see, and they put them away. And I mean, the only thing for the Ospreys maybe would be you would be really disappointed to not get a bonus point there, given how bad Edinburgh were, given the position you were in with 15, 20 minutes to go. You would really be looking to take a bonus point away. You'll not get many days like that at Murrayfield when Edinburgh are as bad as that. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing to see, and there's a lot of chat up here about Edinburgh have obviously got to the playoff stages last year. They've made progress under Cockrow, but this is a big season for them. They really need to move forward, and maybe the COVID situation is not going to support that necessarily. So yeah,
and I thought
it's going to be
from an
interesting.
Point of view, as you said, it was a professional job. I think it was good to see the likes of Rhys Webb playing, Alan Wynne playing. It was good to see them types of players playing, and to get a win, that's the big thing for me. Like, bonus point would have been nice, but to get the win, and in the first 5 minutes, it was quite even. And then the Ospreys started pretty well, getting good front ball going forward. And I thought, no, don't tease me like this. I can't do it. But we held on to the win. We'll quickly go through the two other fixtures because I am aware of time. Scarlets 27, Munster 30. What a game this was. Scarlets were 24-10 up at one point and let it slip. But Lee Halfpenny had an incredible game, kicking, I think, 9 kicks successfully. Incredible. Omani got a second yellow for sliding in unnecessarily, just who knows why. And then the other game, a fantastic game, Bundy Aki pretty much running the show for Connacht, winning that one 28-24. So get your thoughts in the comments about this weekend's games. We are now going to move on to look at some more specific teams, and we're going to look at them in detail. So first of all, we're going to take a look at the Irish provinces. So I'm going to have a chat with Stephen about that, and we'll see the other 3 guests in just a second. So if Joe will drop them out, we'll have a chat with Stephen just about that. We'll first of all talk about, as they jump out, there we go. Perfect. There we go. The Irishman and the Welshman. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. Walk into a bar. It's a good joke.
It's a perfect joke. Let's talk about last season's champions, Leinster. For me personally, I think it's inevitable that they're going to do the same again. The only concern from this weekend's games, you'd say maybe is Sexton, but Leo Cullen has recently come out and said it was a precaution. He's okay, just taking him off just in case. Last season, of course, were champions, unbeaten all season. Same again this season, Stephen?
Yeah, look, I've seen a lot of people online after the Saracens' defeat being like, this is not good. We need to sign a couple of internationals or sign a couple of players. And it's like, Leinster come up against the one team in the world, not the world, but one team in Europe that really is a bad matchup for them. It's the one team that can, they're too physical for them. They can get underneath their skin. They can slow them down. It's just a bad matchup. If Leinster had got drawn the other side of the quarterfinals or the semi-finals, they could still be in the final, and we would be talking about them getting their 5th star on their jersey. So I wouldn't go panicking. You're getting Dan Levy back and Tyke Furlong back. Tyke Furlong obviously later than expected, another injury, but that's like signing 2 internationals there. You know what I mean? Because you haven't had them in so long. So they're still in fantastic shape. They're a machine that just doesn't seem to want to stop. They started Johnny Sexton the other day. I didn't think they would start him. I thought they might keep him on ice for another bit. Look, as an Irishman, I think it's time for Johnny Sexton to move on, especially when it comes to the international stage. I think we need to kind of give space for your Ross Burns. By all accounts, from my Leinster kind of fans or Leinster supporters, Harry Byrne, the younger brother, is actually the real one to watch out for. But it's a case of how long are they willing to wait when Johnny Sexton eventually bows out on this. So he's still producing at a decent level, but when it comes to when you're playing against the Saracens, when you're playing against a Racing 92, is it going to be enough? But they're still in fantastic shape. They probably will. I don't know if they'll go unbeaten. It's going unbeaten 2 years in a row is extremely difficult. You're going to have one bad night, but they just have so many players they can plug in that it doesn't really make a difference if someone is having a bad night.
Yeah, and I think there was quite a bit of discussion in Ireland, especially when Sexton was announced as the captain of Ireland at 33 years old, I believe, injury prone. And there are players, as you said, such as Ross Byrne coming through, Joey Carberry, and Munster as well. And let's talk about Munster. Made some decent signings. The South African centre, of course, coming in. What are the prospects? What is the realistic? What are they trying to achieve this season? What can we expect from them?
I'm not too high on Munster, I'll be honest with you. I watched that game at the weekend, and I know it looked by the score that it was a cracking game, but for 75 minutes, it was just muck. It was awful. Neither team looked like they could break through either of the defences. Munster, obviously, we're all disappointed when R.G. Snyman went down because he brought such a different dynamic to that team and a winning culture, obviously, just coming off the World Cup win. And Dale Enda has been very good, and he's powerful, and he's exactly kind of what they wanted, but they just don't seem to. I don't know if it's not a case of backing themselves going forward. Look, people give them a bad rap for kicking the ball too much in box kicks. It's not that they're kicking that much. They kicked actually nearly half as much as Scarlets the other night. It's when they're kicking and how they're kicking. It's a strange. They're in the 22 of Scarlets of the night, and they put up a box kick, And I get it. Conway's chasing. He's good in the air. They might have seen an opportunity there, but it screams to me that they just don't back themselves when it comes to plays. Like the try they scored against Scarlets the other night, the first try, it came off a broken play. It was a bad clearance. It was almost as if they forgot that they were in the system and they were like, okay, let's just run with it. You know what I mean? It was like it was a broken play, and they were like, okay, let's just create something ourselves here. And they could. They still have great players. But Stephen Larkham's down there as one of the senior coaches, and I can't imagine that that's what he's trying to instill into this team. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just can't see it. They're in a strange spot. They're the least enjoyable to watch of the 4 provinces, and by a country mile at this stage, because they just have nothing going. Going forward, they just don't seem confident. Defensively, they were fine. The discipline was definitely an issue of the day, but the referee was giving a lot of soft penalties in a lot of ways. But still, they knew 10 minutes into that game, these penalties are soft, and they still gave them away. So a team as experienced as that shouldn't be doing it. But yeah, I don't know. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong, because I'm a big Munster fan in the sense of the history and what they bring to the competition. But at the moment, the way they're going with it, I don't see them doing too well.
I'm a big fan of Munster as well. Been to their stadium, think it's one of the best in the league. And what I don't know if it still happens now, but whenever someone would kick, pin drop, it'd be an absolute pin drop there. And that was something I really enjoyed. And yeah, they've got, as you said, they've got some good players. They've got some good players, and they should be doing better. Ulster last season, of course, finalists. Cooney at half. Should he be starting over Conor Murray? That's another question to get.
How long do you have? How long do you have on that? We can talk about hours on that.
But he did okay in the Six Nations. But John Cooney was the form scrum half. Can he lead Ulster to another final, or is there even any point getting to a final because of Leinster?
Look, there's always a point to get to a final. It's when you look back, it's a morale booster. But yeah, look, this team is Cooney's team in a lot of ways, because he's the star man. He had a rough when he came back from the COVID break. He didn't get up to the speeds he was beforehand, because beforehand he was the best player in Europe, and I don't think it was close. But Ulster are a young team here. They've got some really good young players coming through, and I think their time is probably in a year or two from now. You've got some good pieces there with Cooney. The additions of Albie Matheson and Ian Madigan, I think, is great, because when you take off your Cooneys and your Billy Burnses, you're bringing on a great experience there. You've got a scrum half with, I think, 5 or 6 All Black caps, and obviously Madigan has played with Leinster and in England as well. So that's not a bad way to see out the last 20, 15 minutes of a game. I think that they're definitely not at the class yet of a Leinster, or when it comes to Europe, the top boys. They're not just there yet, but by God, they've got some great pieces to work on. Hume there as your centre, and that Stuart Moore guy coming through there. They're 2 powerful young lads who are hungry, and so far have shown everything that they needed to do to become great players. So I still have issues with Stockdale defensively. I think he's great in the air. I think he's great, big, strong, powerful runner. But there's been too many times where we've said, God, his positioning was terrible when it comes to a tackle. He's let that lad go through too easily, too quickly, and it doesn't seem to be improving. So I think they need to kind of tighten up a few things. They're great in patches, and then they're quite sloppy in patches. We've seen that at the weekend with Benetton. They let them kind of run all over them there in the last 10 minutes of the first half, whereas a good team like Leinster would just tighten up, get to half time, and kill all the momentum. So they still need that kind of the next step, but by God, they have all the pieces to do it.
Absolutely, and they were a really exciting team to watch last season. Let's move on to the final province. Connacht got a really good win against Glasgow. Glasgow, over the past few years have been very consistent in the Pro 14. What can we expect from them this season? Can they push for them playoff places? Can they challenge?
Yeah, Connacht are really exciting to watch, actually. I watched the game live the other day, and they are, going forward, they are fantastic. The problem with Connacht is, and Ulster are similar in that sense, their starting 15 is very good, but if they lose any of those key players through injury, that's when I feel the depth isn't quite there. Bundyaki is in incredible form. I think he's the most in-form Irish player at the moment, and he's knocking on Warren Gatlin's door for that 12 jersey when it comes to Alliance, and I don't see why not. He's got the physicality. He's an absolute leader of men. There's a great video going around on Twitter. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he's off the field, he's substituted off, and he's just shouting and barking orders at everyone, and he lives for it. So They're good. They're great going forward. They've added a couple of nice pieces there. You know, Alex Wooten, Peter Sullivan. They've come in and kind of contributed straight away. They've Abraham Papali'i, who is an absolute monster of a man. We've seen him for, well, briefly 20 minutes against Munster when he got sent off for a high tackle on Murray. But that's the kind of player he is. He comes in, he lives on the edge, but he is a monster. And I think he's going to be, between him and Bundy, I wouldn't like to be playing Connacht too often, but definitely pushing for playoff once they get a bit of injury luck. The last few years, they haven't gotten that luck, so they're due a year. But definitely exciting to watch. Again, need to tighten up small little areas. At the weekend there's a couple of gaps defensively where they'll need to close that up. But if they do that, they are not a fun team to play against. And Galway and the sports grounds, like Ulster, like Belfast, has become a bit of a fortress, and they want to keep it that way. So positive things about Connacht. I think that they, going forward, again, have all the pieces to do what they need to do. It's a case of just keeping everyone healthy and fit, and hopefully they do.
Absolutely. So Leinster to win the league, I guess that's the main thing here. But the forward teams, I think, are in a good place. Most of them, maybe Munster not, are in a good place to challenge and to push. We're now going to bring everyone back in. I'm going to chat about the Italian sides. Welcome everyone back into the stream. I thought that was a really interesting chat about the Irish sides. Let's talk about the Italian sides. Two teams from Italy in this year's competition. Of course, we have Zebra and we have Benetton. Let's talk about Benetton first of all, Andrea. What are the expectations for this season? What can we really expect from them?
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Like I mentioned before, I would like to spend some moment to remember the highest historical level of Benetton rugby, because we need to start from there, because Benetton and Zebra are the front side of the Rugby Italian Federation that is very complicated to understand. And if you want to chat together at the same level of yours, guys, because let me tell you, this broadcast is great thanks to you. And we had to focus on that moment. It was the 4th of May 2019 in Limerick at Thomond Park in front of 10,000 rugby supporters, and not even at the Red Army. And you know what I mean. For that very important match, the referee was Mr. Nigel Owens. 15-13 was the final score. But we won. Benetton doesn't want the match, want the possibility to entering at the semi-final. Was a new state of mind for the rugby supporter, for the rugby environment. We just get that. Because Benetton and Zebra, at the old Celtic League, they are since 2010, and recently confirmed for 4 years. And I want to be focused on that moment because actually that moment earned the last match, or the level of the last match. I just want to broadcast with you the highlight that I send right now. Here we go, perfect. And pass to the past, and we step to the future with the present. What I can notice from the beginning of this short season, the short beginning, is a very high desire of the professionals, but not only for the player, also for the manager, and also for all the person around, like the marketing teams that I am very good connected. From both teams, Benetton and Zebra, they are trying to let the younger players to do more and more. So Michael Bradley, then Cian Crowley, the head manager, coming from a very good career, and they are working very good, building very competitive, not only teams, but environment. It means all the person that are working with the team. If Benetton has reached a good level, like they show it last real season, 2018-2019, canceling the last because of the COVID, we are all waiting for Zebra, because they are able to beat Benetton and more other squad of the Pro 14.
Absolutely. And I think Benetton are going to be the front runner. We got to be honest, they are going to be the front runner in this one. But Zebra have some good players as well. And yeah, it'll take some time, but again, 1,000 fans back in the stadium is really encouraging. And let's talk Scottish rugby now then, John. As an Ospreys fan, I don't have to remind you what happened on the weekend. I've already done that a couple of times today. But let's start with Edinburgh then. Last season, very, very encouraging. This season, more of the same, do you believe?
No. No. I think no. I see Edinburgh. Last season was a real high point for Edinburgh, and I think that there was a number of circumstances came together to make it possible for Edinburgh to go as far as they did. Obviously, they were playing in the Challenge Cup and got to the quarterfinal of that as well. It should be remembered as well, when the season was kind of brought to an end, they did have some quite difficult games left to play, and the chances are they would have still made the playoffs. Would they have made directly to the semi-finals? Possibly not. Would they have got home quarter? Maybe not even. So it came together that I think this season will be remembered as being better than it perhaps actually was for Edinburgh. And there's another element at play here. Edinburgh have kind of flown under the radar because they've been poor for many, many years before Richard Cockerell arrived. A lot of these players, the talented players though they are, have kind of flown under the radar, and you're starting to see now in this post-pandemic world of rugby, where we maybe don't quite have the same level of finance available, everyone's going to be looking for a bargain. And if you're looking for a bargain, you come to Scotland. You come north and you see who you can find. So I'm quite concerned that a few of their players may find themselves getting cherry-picked by some of the bigger teams in Europe. And there's no depth for Edinburgh. They've got one professional level standoff, and then they're relying on a first-year rookie who has now got 1.5 professional games under their belt, not trusted by Cockerell in the slightest. It was meant to be Lance was meant to have signed, but there was visa issues. So, but there's no money to replace that now. So Edinburgh they're in a bit of a situation. They'll do well up front. They've got a strong forward pack. They always look the part there. Their back row they've got about 7,000 back rows over there just now, which us on the other side of the M8 are looking over a bit enviously at some of those. But they're a limited side, and they will possibly get found out this season.
Yeah, and I think Edinburgh are showing, from last season that they did do well, but the challenge then is to continue that into this season. They have fantastic players such as Hamish Watson, who I believe, is probably one of the most underrated in the world in his position. Yep. I just think he's absolutely brilliant. And let's move on to Glasgow Warriors. Didn't have the greatest start to the season, but over the past few years have been pretty consistent on the whole, up there challenging, but recently, over the past couple of years, have lost the likes of Finn Russell, but Richie Gray has come back to Scotland. What's the expectation for Glasgow? Can they get back to the days where they won the league? Can they challenge at the top once again?
So that's two very different questions. Can they challenge at the top? Absolutely. Can they win the league? No. The chat with Stephen probably confirmed that as well. No one else is going to win the league unless Leinster decides so, which is a shame. But they certainly can be pushing at the top. Obviously we've got a new coach in this season. Danny Wilson's come in from the Scottish setup, replacing Dave Rennie, who's moved on to Australia. Mm-hmm. There's the end of the Dave Rennie era sort of petered out last season. We'd started really badly just when the World Cup ended. We'd 4 losses in a row, which for Glasgow's pretty unheard of in recent times. There seemed to be a real lethargy about the squad last season, which we've now lost a couple of the bigger names. Again, it seems to be a sort of annual thing happening at Glasgow. We see the big names moving on. However, this, as you rightly say, Richie Gray's come back. We've recruited relatively well. People seem to have forgotten that we obviously brought back Leone Nakarawa in January, who former World Player of the Year. His first game back, he had scored a try within a minute, and Glasgow's offload numbers went through the roof. So he'll be a good addition to the squad. We'll not see him till December due to various issues, but yeah, we've recruited well, and I think Glasgow have got to be targeting playoffs again. The issue we have, however, is we do not actually have a professional level fullback at Glasgow at all. We've now got Hugh Jones playing fullback, who was one of the best 13s in the world as recently as a couple of seasons ago, and he's now covering fullback for us. So again, some issues there, but we will see. He's looking the part anyway at the moment. So.
And finally, I just want to get your thoughts on how the squad will be impacted over the season when the players are called up to the national side. Do you think that will have a massive impact? Something we see across the league? Is that really going to affect both sides?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And again, it's pure numbers, isn't it? You know, the Scottish national team is generally, we don't necessarily have that many players playing abroad. And I know obviously the Welsh and the Irish have their own ways of controlling that, but you know, we don't have as strict a rule on it. We just don't have as many players playing abroad. But we do only have two regions, and the raw numbers are Glasgow and Edinburgh tend to lose around 16 players each. Glasgow have lost as many as 26 to Six Nations squads. So there's one team in the Pro 14/12 that can cope with that. There's not many others that can, and Glasgow always have to really work hard during these international windows, and obviously with it being extended this year, it's going to be very difficult. But we often find that in times of adversity, you maybe see the odd gem coming through, and it's great to see the young academy guys getting game time. And who knows, you might just find the next Stuart Hogg, the next Finn Russell, from those young lads that are coming out the academy and getting their first taste of professional rugby. They've all got to start somewhere, and what better way for them to maybe get their first experience than in these circumstances. So look forward to it.
Yeah, having a game against the Dragons on a cold, wet night at Murrayfield is exactly what I would love to do as a young professional rugby player when it's freezing cold outside.
Scotstown for us, mate. It's even colder and wetter over here. Yeah, it's. I remember sitting in the stand recently. Was it last season? Maybe last season. It was one of the Italian teams we were playing, and I have never been as cold as this. It got to the point where Dougie Vipond, who does the Pro 14 coverage for Premier Sports, I was up in the press box, and he walked past me. And I must have looked like I was on my last legs, because he decided he had to go and get me a coffee, because I looked like I was about to perish. It was brutally cold.
That's great. The final nation to look at is Wales. We wouldn't be doing it properly if we didn't cover Wales as the Welsh Rugby Roundup Show. Rhian, what are we thinking about the Welsh regions? First of all, let's talk about your team, the Dragons. Encouraging signs over the past few months. Good signings coming in. What is the realistic expectation for this season from the Dragons?
Well, they finished 5th last year in Conference A, and some of the new signings are really impressive. John Holmes, Nick Tompkins, and of course Dr. Jamie Roberts. And I know we've had a bit of offline chat about whether Jamie's too old, but I think he's one of these sort of linchpins and can manage a game. So I think that's a really positive signing for the Dragons. They've yet to fulfil the promise they've got on paper, and it was a bit worrying to see some of the creaking scrums in their first game. And as we said earlier, they did improve towards the end of the game, and hopefully they'll go forward. You know, you put Leinster, you could put the Leinster match to bed, but I would like to see them gel more as a team. I'm seeing lots of good individual plays. Moriarty took some big hits, but I just want to see them gel more as a team. So that's what I'm taking. And, you know, Ashton Hewitt, sublime try, amazing guy.
Absolutely. He's done so much, not just for rugby, but for society, you know, with everything that he's been talking about recently. And it's so important that that conversation is had. Let's talk about the Ospreys quickly. I am aware of time. Ospreys, of course, a win, our first win. I couldn't believe it. We actually won. I couldn't believe it.
Say, you know, you get seventh last year, and you know, we've already mentioned that was thanks to the South Africans. They can only go up, and what they've got to do at the moment now, though, is get their wins in while the international guys are still playing, because they lose a chunk of players once the international season comes. So they really need to be putting their you know, the scores on the doors and getting their points in now, because you know, you're talking Anscombe, Alwyn Jones, Tips, Webb. You know, they're all going to be in that Welsh squad, so probably off on international duty. So the important thing for the Ospreys is to keep up the momentum and you know, just keep going the way they are. There, you know, you've got to play every game, you've got to win every game, and again, you know, there's some young players coming up. They need blooding, and hopefully, well, I can't see the Ospreys doing worse than they did last year. They look different, and I think hopefully they're refinding form.
Yeah, and I think the hope for us this season is to push for them playoffs. It might be a bit too soon, but I think we've got to aim for that. Cardiff Blues starting with a win. Josh Adams scoring tries as he always does. Exciting fly half to Jared Evans. What's the expectation this season?
The thing with the Blues is they're up and down, aren't they? You know, they blow hot and cold. I think they've got probably the coach John Mullihill is probably the one, the coach has been there the longest now of the Welsh region. So hopefully he's bedded in, and the way, you know, he wants to play has started to make their mark. So I hope he'll be hoping that they won't have the injuries they had last year, because I think you know, if you look at their injury list from last year, they were missing some top players for a long time and large chunks of the season. They've signed Corey Hill and Reece Khan, and you know, that's a real solid two additions. Nick Williams retiring means that they lack a big carrion now, although I have all faith in Navidi. I think you know, he'll step up to the plate, and he's probably, I believe that Josh is one of their best players anyway. And well, you know, more than capable of hitting and carrying. So I'm quietly optimistic for the Blues, to be honest. I think that if they can keep, you know, if the injuries, their injury list, they can keep that down, then they've got as good chance as any. They came sixth last year. I see them finishing higher than that this year.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Willis Halaholo is back from injury. I'm very, very briefly, let's chat about the Scarlets losing on the first day, but always been there or thereabouts. What can we expect from them?
They were third last year, and were the best Welsh region by far. And they'll be looking to build on this. Yeah, they lost to Munster, and that wasn't a particularly inspiring game. If Halfpenny hadn't been on the pitch, it would have been an absolute I think. So yeah, look out for Sam Castello. He shone in the under-20 Six Nations, and hopefully he'll make his mark with the Scarlets this year. I think Scarlets will improve. I think they need a bit of a kick up there, Jaxie, and again, it's a bit like the Dragons. They need to just settle down and play as a team.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think the Scarlets will be there or thereabouts and probably be the strongest Welsh region. Finally, guys, I pretty much know what you're all going to say, but I'll come round one of you at a time and ask you for your champion this year. Stephen, your champion is going to be?
I hate to be boring. I'd love to pick someone else, but unfortunately, I think it's the Leinster. Unfortunately, I think they're just too deep. Unfortunately, but I would love someone.
Is there
else
a dark horse we should keep an eye on?
I don't. It's tough. Oh God. If Munster get their act together, I think they can actually compete because defensively they look pretty good, but they need to really change it around. I think Scarlets weren't as bad as they looked the other day. Unless Lee Halfpenny just literally wants to kick 10 penalties a game, that might work. That could work, but it's tough. It really is tough to pick kind of
John,
a dark horse.
Champion for you, and is there a dark horse we should be watching this season?
Yeah, so much the same. The champion will be Leinster. There's no doubt about that in anyone's eyes. It would take catastrophic collapse of untold proportions for Leinster to not end the season as champions. I think in terms of dark horses, it's one of those seasons. The challenge could come from anywhere. Again, we're hopeful up here that we would see, maybe one or both of our teams challenging. You might have the Ospreys, the Scarlets are a decent side. I hate saying this, but Munster, as you say, if they get their act together, it just takes a run of games. But again, it's back to that point. It'll be who manages the international windows best that'll kind of determine who's there or thereabouts. So yeah, I mean, could be anything. It's mental.
Absolutely.
Mental
Andrea, who's going to be your champion, and which team should we be looking out for? Who may surprise us a little bit this season?
For sure, it's not Leinster. So absolutely, Leinster is a sort of New Zealand for the Europe side of the world. Everybody knows. Also, Leinster is a kind of situation to follow, and Benetton just proved it because today we are able to count 50 different teammates. That it is a kind of Leinster model, okay, for this season. And the biggest surprise could be the minority, like for instance Zebra. And here we got a saying here in Italy, and say the bigger is and more noise it makes when it falls. So
yes, we have a similar one.
We can all hope,
Right.
can't we? Champions,
yeah.
Leinster, yeah?
It'll probably be Leinster. I'd like to see Scarlets there and thereabout. And of course, the Dragons are going to be the dark horses, and they're going to come in and take a lot.
Exactly. There we go, though. Thank you so much to our guests for this week's show. Just one quick thing to plug for you guys. The next live show is this coming Wednesday at 8:30. And it is with Rugby Academy Ireland. It's the Women's Rugby Initiative and why coaching has to be different. So you can find it on the Three Blokes page. Here, make sure you like the page, the Welsh Rugby Roundup Show. We're going to be putting content out regularly, and every month we'll have a roundup. We'll talk about everything to do about Welsh Rugby. But I've got to thank our guests, Stephen, John, Andrea, and of course, Rhian. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we will see you again very, very soon here on Three Blokes and the Welsh Rugby Roundup Show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.